Because the federal government, the president, and the CBN has said we should go ahead and continue to use the old Naira note. No, it goes beyond that. And so the purpose of this press conference is to further impress it on Mr. President that if he wants us to believe him, if he wants angry Nigerians to believe him, he should go ahead and take further measures. And so the presidency has sought to absolve itself from the anger, from the disappointment, from the needless economic tribulations caused by the head of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, and his accomplices, who are in the villa. And that press statement issued by the presidency, claiming that the president's innocence about the flagrant disobedience to the Supreme Court judgment that established the validity of the old Naira note until the end of the year, 11 days after the ruling was delivered. Don't forget that that ruling was delivered 11 days before or after the president's speech or statement. In the statement, the presidency argued that the CBN and other relevant agencies do not require a prompt from the president to obey a court ruling, especially the country's apex court. That is quite interesting, and we are happy about that, that next time the apex court or anybody should obey the court irrespective of the president's decision. Well, without wading into the validity of the claim, as that is left to historians whose job it is to carry out a post-mortem of this administration's deeds and determine President Muhammadu Buhari's legacy, we wish to inform Mr. President that he cannot simply be left off the hook with a belated statement that came at the time the status quo was evidently unsustainable. To fully redeem himself and prove his non-involvement in the evil conspiracy against ordinary Nigerians and small businesses across the country, he must, in line with his constitutional powers and obligations as the nation's leader, hold those responsible for this sabotage to account. Without mincing words, dear colleagues, our demand as Nigerians is that there must be a reckoning for the disaster of the past few months, and it must begin with the leading culprits in the persons of Mr. Godwin Emefiele and his chief backer, Mr. Malami Abubakar, the Honorable Minister of Justice, who has failed to distinguish himself in this sad debacle. Mr. President must go further and beyond the statements and take action and measures that will restore confidence and hope in the judiciary. Don't forget that apart from the judiciary, our economy has been battered. That begins with an immediate sack of Mr. Godwin Emefiele and Mr. Abubakar Malami. The reason for this is self-explanatory. Not only has Mr. Godwin Emefiele and the Central Bank of Nigeria, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, turned himself into a politician, they've done irreparable damage to the nation's economy, wiping out small businesses and condemning Nigerians with an inescapable reliance on cash to death by hunger. He has also achieved the opposite of what he was appointed to do, which is to design and implement monetary policies to promote stability and investment. The country has been pushed to a cliff and investors are fleeing in droves. There is no objective reason for Mr. Emefiele, the most infamous central banker in the history of Nigeria, to continue in his role. There's no justification for it, dear colleagues. As for Minister Malami, his dodgy interpretation of the law and questionable devotion to political interests that are demonstrably against national well-being have shown that his commitment is first to his shady political ambitions before the rule of law and public interest. For that, he simply must be relieved of his role and must let loose to focus his attention and doubtful abilities on the selfish ambition he trained his sights since every day he received his oath of office, for the president to fully exonerate himself from culpability, he should immediately sack his Attorney General, Abubakar Malami, and the CBN Governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele. It is not enough for the CBN Governor to announce his surrender to Supreme Court judgment. Both the President, the management of the Apex Court, must make sure that Nigerians are able to access their money without any inhibitions. The unnecessary queues must immediately disappear from the banks, from the filling stations, from the ATMs, from hospitals, from markets, shopping malls, from POS, among others. This rush cashless policy has not produced the cashless economy promised by its executors. There's a difference between cashless policy and cashless economy. Instead, it has brought pains, crisis, suffering, violence, bloodletting that accompany the ill-timed Naira redesign and its twin brother, artificial and fuel scarcity, all induced and imposed on helpless Nigerians by the president and some members of his kitchen cabinet, especially Abubakar Malami and Mr. Godwin Emefiele. Gentlemen, apart from being shadowy and suspicious, the Naira redesign from conception to implementation has been a revenge tool by some anti-Tinubu persons around Mr. President, especially those who lost out of the presidential primaries of the ruling All Progressive Congress, and therefore pointing to the presence of a hideous, sinister motive other than what Nigerians were told by Mr. Godwin Emefiele. Nigerians, the APC, the president-elect, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, were designable enough. They noticed the secrecy which the policy and its implementation conceived, and they staunchly criticized it. But those hell-bent in sabotaging the fragile economy of the country went ahead to inflict pains on the helpless masses. We are all aware of the attendant death, the violence, the arson, the killings of innocent Nigerians, and the destruction of banks, which the unnecessary policy of Godwin Emefiele caused Nigerians, and we are unanimous that he should be made to account for it. Again, on why Mr. President must go the extra mile to extricate himself and sack the CBN Governor and the Attorney General is this. Would the presidency also claim that Mr. President was not aware that the CBN Governor openly identified with APC as a political party and through cronies allowed himself to be enrolled as a presidential aspirant under the APC? Is this not against all professional, moral, and ethical norms? I want to assume Mr. President wasn't in the know Emefiele had become a politician over time, and using his office to his own advantage with the enormous resources at his disposal. But what I cannot vouch for, Mr. President, is this: his pretense over Emefiele's political interest to assume the position of Mr. President. If Mr. President is not in cohort with Mr. Emefiele, he should immediately ask him to resign or get him sacked because he has compromised the main condition for engaging him at the Apex Bank, and that is not to be partisan. Finally, the president-elect has an assignment. Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu has a task on his hands, and this is not only urgent, it is a matter of national importance. He must immediately sack the CBN Governor, Godwin Emefiele, if he survives this administration of President Muhammadu Buhari. The incoming administration must set up a panel of inquiry to probe Emefiele and Malami, charge them to court for treason, disobedience to court judgment, and economic sabotage, among other related offenses, commensurate with all the crimes they've jointly and individually committed against Nigerians and the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Gentlemen, this is why we've called you for this press conference. Thank you so very much. About 4, 5 more, or 6 months to go when they introduce this policy, somebody will ask you, during the electioneering period, why also in a hurry to immediately bring suffering upon Nigerians where you had first tenure, 4 years, immediately you came in for the second tenure, first year, second year, you didn't implement these policies. Suddenly, Emefiele lost presidential aspiration, and then he hurried in to say he wants currency redesign. It is suspicious. And besides, let me add that if it is 1 week before the expiration of this administration, Nigerians can't keep quiet. Do you even find the money in the bank as we speak? Did Emefiele not tell us he has destroyed the 1,500 Naira notes? Nigerians are still suffering despite the president's speech, despite Emefiele's order that the people should begin to use the old notes, Nigerians are still grumbling. Nigerians are still suffering. Go to the queues in the bank. Go to the malls. Go to the hospitals. People are dying that, look, if you don't have cash, you can't get treatment in the hospital. It's as bad as that.
All right, so my name is Abdul Yusuf from Liberty TV.
Introduces new currency and immediately ban the old one. Which country around the world, be it Europe, US, UK, and no country in the world does that. No country. In fact, Nigeria is the first in the history of the world to ban old notes and introduce new notes that are not even available. They are not available. If they are available, where are they? Why are Nigerians dying?
If Roman you told them to prosecute them.
Yes.
If they fail, what do you do? What are the options for you?
That's quite interesting. If the president fails to sack them, and if the incoming administration also fail to sack, of course, Malami is going with the president, and you have the CBN governor needing to complete his tenure. I will urge the incoming president, the president-elect, never, one day, 1 hour, when he's sworn in fact, it should be part of his swearing-in speech to immediately right there, where after being sworn in, his speech to thank Nigerians, his speech for acceptance, whatever the speech will be, it must include the sentence, the sacking of Emefiele.
All right. I think the message is simple and it's clear.
Mr. President, assuming without considering that Mr. President is not culpable, we agree it's not culpable. Let's assume that it's not culpable. Mr. President, sack them. Mr. President, it took you 11 days before Garba issued a statement. It took you 11 days. It didn't take you 1 hour. It didn't take you 24 hours, 48 hours. 11 days, Nigerians were still suffering after the Supreme Court judgment. And only for the president to say, oh, I didn't authorize Emefiele, I didn't authorize Malami not to obey the court judgment. Really? President of the country. Well, Mr. President, it's true, we believe you. But you need to go further by sacking these people for Nigerians to truly believe the president isn't part of this plot.
I remember how vigorously you...
The achievement of President Muhammadu Buhari, no, I'm not disappointed. I am disappointed that at the twilight of the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, he allowed selfish politicians to derail his government. And I've always written articles that Mr. President should watch it. He must not allow persons with selfish ambition. You check it out. Emefiele gathered some guys behind the scene, and we understand he was interested in the presidency. The governor of the APS Bank interested in presidency, meaning that throughout his years in the banking sector, he has been saving money, he has been orchestrating policies to enable him become the president of this country. That is another issue. Now, governors are trying. Look, I want to appreciate Governor Wike of Rivers State. I want to appreciate Governor El-Rufai of Kaduna. I want to appreciate Governor Yaya Bello of Kogi State. Several other governors, APC chieftains, the president-elect, for coming out. Imagine, even the president-elect said, no, this is suspicious. It is not because we are disappointed in the achievement of Muhammadu Buhari, no, but because we must help the president to finish well and finish strong.
Thank you very much.